Welcome, everyone. Thank you for attending or tuning in to the webinar today titled The Devil in the Dump SKU. It should be a fairly short one, I'm thinking, no more than 10 minutes or so I won't take up much of your time today. My name is Charles Owen. I'll be your host today, and this will be recorded later as well. So as of probably tomorrow morning, you should be able to see the recording of this if you'd like to rewatch it or pass it along. I will have availability for questions at the end of this webinar. So all you need to do is go to the little question box and put in your question if you have any questions, and I'll go ahead and answer those at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. So what you're going to learn today is the purpose of a dump SKU. What's it all about? Also, the devil in the dump SKU. What are some of the caveats or gotchas? You know, how to create a dump SKU. We'll go through that process. Guidelines for using a dump SKU. Also, dump SKU margin reporting. And then also optional settings like setting up discounts for dump SKUs, as well as setting up margin protection on dump SKUs. And then converting dump SKUs into actual active inventory items. We'll go over all these processes. Again, it's not going to take a whole lot of time, but there is some really good, valuable information in this presentation. To start out with, the purpose of a dump SKU. Why do we keep a dump SKU, and what is it? Well, a dump SKU, and SKU stands for stock keeping unit, can be created and used for many reasons. One is if you have a generic part number when a product barcode is non-existent, right? So you just have an item that just doesn't have a barcode on it. It either didn't come with one or it got scratched off, or for whatever reason it's not there. You need to be able to get the customer through the line. You can just use a dump SKU for that. Also, for bulk commodity items such as nuts, bolts, fasteners, nails, things of that nature that you're selling in eaches, you know, this is very common to use a dump SKU for that process. And then also when you're temporarily just getting up and running, you might not have everything in your inventory scannable. And that's the case, you're going to go ahead and use a dump SKU, and then you'll want to add a brief description of that product or that item that you're selling in the note field so that at a later time you can go in and add that item to the inventory. We'll show that on the very last slide. So what is the devil in the dump SKU? What are some of the warnings? Well, there could be negative effects on using dump SKUs if they're not properly set up. So you can have skewed daily sales reports, skewed margins, skewed stock replenishment reports, and skewed sales history reports. And that's because unless you do it right, you may not have revenue associated with the dump SKU, or it might not be tied to a particular department. And when you have those things not set up properly, you can get reporting errors. But don't worry, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're losing money when you see reports with little or no revenue and margin. It just means that we need to correct some of those and set it up properly from that moment forward. So in order to do this, we have some tools in the system that your customer service folks can help you with. So contact Paladin customer support if you need assistance with any of these after the fact. So let's say you've already had dump SKUs and you just realize that, oh my gosh, we're not getting revenue or margins on these dump SKUs or these items that we're selling. We can perform some magic on that. So how do you create a dump SKU? It's real easy. You just add a new inventory item. So go into the inventory module, press the F2, add item, and then you just fill in the required fields. And they are part number, description, cost, sale price, stock on hand, and department. And in this case, the part number should be something that is some sort of an identifying code, a department code, maybe HW for hardware, maybe ELE for electrical, or PL for plumbing, whatever it might be. It's always good to be descriptive in the actual part number. And then in the description, just go ahead and write in the description. You can put in, you know, this is a hardware item that doesn't have a scan, you know, whatever you want to write into that description to recognize that it is a dump SKU used to fulfill a particular department use. So I say that meaning if you sold with one dump SKU called miscellaneous or MISC, and that was all you used, it isn't really going to give you a fair margin on the individual departments. So if you can tie a dump SKU to a department, it's just much better. All right, so you also want to set a cost of 0, a sale price or sell price of 0, a stock on hand of 0, and then department, choose the relevant department based on the dump SKU you're creating. Now I recommend creating a dump SKU for all your basic departments, like, as I just mentioned, hardware, plumbing, electrical, lumber, those are some of the departments you want to create. So those might be some items that come up to the counter that don't have barcodes on them. Or if you're brand new and you're just adding items to the inventory and you don't yet have those items in your inventory, it's okay to get the customer through the line and take their money very quickly, and then just make sure that you put in the description of the item that you're selling, and obviously tying it to the right department, and then you can go back at a later time and add that item officially to the active inventory, so you no longer will not have a scan. All right, and then click F12 just to add the product, and after that there's a second part to this. You want to make sure you go in and go into the order control tab, and in the stock information pane where it says max quantity, go ahead and enter 0, press the enter key, then click the padlock and lock it in place. Save it with F12. The reason you want to do this is you don't want this item to be showing up on the suggested order report, and by locking this in at 0 for max quantity, it will never show up on the suggested order report. Next, the pricing levels tab. Well, under the pricing tab, select pricing levels, and you'll see on the right hand side there it says ref. It's next to margin. It is a reference margin. Reference margin is the average margin that this particular departmental item will bring in. How much margin? You're going to get 30%, 38%, 40%. It depends on the department. Some departments might be less, like lumber, for example. You might set the department to a reference margin of 23, maybe hardware 38, maybe paint goods 41. Just go ahead and set a average reference margin or average margin that you think you'll get, and then anything and everything you sell at checkout, it will use that particular margin regardless of what the price is when you sell it at checkout. And then lastly, well, not so lastly, there's another one where you click the general tab. There's a couple of things here. The general tab, you want to check the non-inventory box. This will maintain a stock on hand of 0 always. So that will allow you to not go into the negative when selling dump SKUs. That's really all it does. It also prevents it from showing up on the suggested order report as well. And then optionally, you can enter a class for a dump SKU. So I just put class 3333 dump SKU is the class I used. And the reason you might want to do this is for reporting purposes down the line. Next, let's look at the guidelines for using dump SKUs. So this is just a reiteration of what I just went over. Basically says the only thing that's new, and it basically tells you, what fields you want to go ahead and add in when you create a dump SKU, and what some of those delimiters and or criteria might be. In this case, I've added alternate part number, so that is an optional field. So you can enter an additional part number or code. That's easy for cashiers to recognize and recall. Same as the first one. Well, it wouldn't be the same. The part number is going to be something short and simple. The alternate part number can be something a little more descriptive. For example, part number might be HW. Alternate part number might be the word hardware. And then on the description, you might put a description. This is for hardware dump SKUs. Just enter a description that makes sense to you and your customers as it will appear on the receipt. And then the cost, of course, is going to be 0. Now the sale price, we have an option here. Normally, I recommend setting it to 0. But we have some folks that felt that is kind of scary. You don't want to sell something at 0. And if you don't put in a price when you scan that item or when you type in that SKU, then it will, in fact, be a $0 item. So some folks put in a higher number here, like $500 or $1,000 in that field, which will force the cashier to enter the accurate amount because, of course, the cashier and the customer will recognize that, hey, what are you charging me $500 for this 10-cent part? You know, we can go ahead and change that at the time of checkout. So that's just a little helpful thing that some folks do. And then department, you know, create a different dump SKU for each major department for better accounting practices. Reference margin, you already know what to do there. Put in the actual or the average or estimated margin that you would get for that particular department. And then max quantity, set it at 0, lock it in, and then check it as a non-inventory item. Those are the basic guidelines for using dump SKUs. What I didn't add here is the last one that was on the previous screen, which is class. But I do recommend putting a class as well for dump SKUs. That way, it just makes it a lot easier to find dump SKUs. Now, especially if you have multiple dump SKUs in different departments, because you can search for part number HW, right, or ELE, or PL, or whatever the electrical and plumbing part numbers are. But it just makes it nice where you can kind of roll everything into one ball and say, I want to see all dump SKUs for all departments. Well, then that way, having a class in there for dump SKU would be very effective reporting for that. Let's continue with dump SKU margin reporting. So how do you get some of these? What's important here? So first of all, inventory items are considered dump SKU if the average cost is 0. When this happens, the reference margin value on that item has to be set. It must be set to an estimated margin made during the sale. I've mentioned this, just continue to hit on this because it's very important. If the reference margin isn't changed and you keep the 0 that was there before, there won't be any margin or profit for that department when you're reporting. So that's why it's important to put a reference margin in. The message on the left displays any time the inventory is saved that has a 0 cost and 0 reference margin. It says this item is considered a dump SKU and will use reference margin to calculate profit at time of sale. Do you want the sales of this item to report a profit of 0? No, I don't think so. So that warning message does come up and it gives you a chance to go in and put in a reference margin at that time. There's several reports that you can get that you can help identify errors and discrepancies in reporting. That is the comparative revenue report. It's a very handy, quick report that you can get at any time. Invoice margin analysis report as well, and then inventory count list. All of those reports, in addition to others in the system, are there that can help you identify where there might be problem margins. All right, let's continue. So what about applying discounts to dump SKUs? Well, this is possible. If you, as an option, you might want to allow dump SKUs to be used for F4 discounting. So if you're at checkout and you notice the F4 discount button, before you can, if you don't have this checked, you cannot discount and expect a 10% discount to happen. What it will do is it'll look at the current price in the inventory and it will discount that item to 0. So if you've got this particular item under File Setup, Invoice Store tab, down below where it reads Invoice F4 discount applies to manually priced item, if you have that checked, then it will respect the discount. If you put in a 10% discount, it will discount it off of the price that you put in on the invoice, not back in the inventory. So this is a really cool feature. It enables you to include dump SKUs in all other items in that invoice to get a discount across the board. Additionally, you can apply margin protection to the dump SKUs as well. So here you go to the same tab, File, Setup, Invoice Store tab, and you look for Invoice F4 discount respects minimum margin. It's right above the one we just changed. And here it will make sure that you're not selling items under your threshold, under your profitability threshold. So this will enable you to, if a 10% discount actually brings you below your minimum margin, it will not allow you to go below that. So it protects your margin even on dump SKUs. and it looks at that reference margin to do this, right? Now, be sure that and verify that your minimum margins are set up. So under the File Setup tab, there's a Min Margin tab that you can set a global minimum margin across the board. In addition, you can go to the Department tab, which is also in the same area. It's just up on top there to the right, next to employees, between employees and delivery. It says Department. If you go there, it'll enable you to now refine that minimum margin to customize it to the particular department. And this is really key and really important and very helpful to help you make sure that you lock a protection for margins in, not only at the global level, but at the department level as well. And the department level trumps the minimum margin at the global level. So if you have a minimum margin set at 30 and you want to do some items in the department at 40, it will respect the department level over what is set for minimum margin tab. Okay, and you can see on this little box on the bottom there says please select discount amount. There is a respect minimum margin checkbox, which you could uncheck as long as you have authorization to do so. And then you can see also apply this to manually priced items. Both of those are checked, so they will be checked automatically when you go into the F4 discount function. All right, we have one more slide here. This slide is all about converting dump SKUs into active inventory items. Why is this important? Well, if you're a brand new store, and let's say you're able to get 75% of your inventory in the system, but you still have some lines, some aisles, some products that are not scannable, or you can scan them and they don't know what they aren't tied to a particular item in the inventory. This will help you clean up that additional 25%. So I would say when you're forced to use a dump SKU during the checkout where you're scanning an item but it's just not recognizing it, use a dump SKU for that, but then add a description underneath it. You can see in the very bottom left-hand side here, I put Zorro Select 4PE17 door handle. That was the description I used, and I just copy and pasted it from the internet. The dump SKU, my part number is hardware. My description actually says hardware catch-all dump SKU, just to explain what it is. But by putting this description in, what you're doing is you're enabling the system, or you're enabling yourself to generate a report at the end of the day and go ahead and add that item along with the barcode scan to the inventory, so the next time you scan it, it will scan just properly. So how do you get this? So a couple of different ways. You can go and run a transaction report at the end of the day for all the dump SKUs, apply to checkout, go through that transaction report and add all the appropriate products to inventory. This will assure that next time you scan the product, it will recognize the barcode and scan properly. Now, when you're doing this, make sure that you verify the vendor's UPC code and part number. Confirm that it is not already in the system, because you may scan one barcode and it may be in there with the part number, for example. And if you were to add that barcode in the system as a part number, now you've got essentially two of the same item. So you want to verify that the part number is not used and the UPC isn't used. And if you try to add either one of those to the system and it already finds it, it'll say duplicate record exists, and you'll just go and find that particular item, whether it's through the UPC or the part number, and you'll make sure that the other scan that you were using, whichever one it is added to that particular item in the inventory, again, solving that problem. Now, what if you do make the mistake of adding two items that are the same? Well, you can't do it using the same UPC or the same part number, but like I said, if you have one as a part number and one set up as UPC, and those are the part numbers for two different items, then you'll use the inventory merge utility to correct those duplicate items. And it just blends those two together, bringing in the history of sales and bringing in all the different part numbers and alternate part numbers that exist in those two different records. Okay, so that is a lot. Hopefully that was good for you. You learned something. That's the only goal here, is that you learn something and you're able to better the way that you sell products and and report on your margins. Dump SKUs are very critical. They are an integral component of any point of sale system because they are used and they definitely have a place, but you need to set them up correctly. So how to create a dump SKU, there is a knowledge base article on that. Also, dump SKU margin protection, there is a knowledge base article on that as well. And you can go to our help portal, which at any time, you don't have to be on the Paladin system. You can go to portal.paladinpos.com. You can see it down below. And if you wanted to go to specifically the knowledge base or webinars or training videos, you would just type that word after. But you can just go to the .com and select from the list. All right, so here's a plug for next time. So February 21st, we're going to be doing a webinar on coupons. So these aren't instant savings. They aren't coupons that you get from your vendor. These are coupons that you can make up in the store to use as marketing material. You can also add them to the circulars or any ads that you have on your store that people can cut out and use in the store. So it's a great way to reward customers. If they're, let's say you want to push a particular product, you can say, hey, buy this particular barbecue and get a $50 coupon. You can have those two together. The coupons will be serialized, so you can only use them once. You got to attend this if you're at all interested in using coupons. Gift cards are great. They're a different purpose. You can also use gift cards to add credit to the store. You can add credit to accounts. You can have pricing plans and sales that are, BOGOs and things like that. This is way different. This is actually having a physical piece of paper that you hand somebody and they bring back to the store or they use to purchase, and you scan it just like cash. Now you can have rules associated with that, but we'll go over the specifics on February 21st. Look forward to seeing you then. That concludes our presentation today. I'm looking at the question box. So far, I don't see anything. So if there's nothing else, folks, thank you so much for attending. You can always go to our website, find out more information about how to grow your retail sales through retail science, and also rewatch this webinar and others as well. Thank you so much for attending today. God bless everybody. Be safe out there, and till next time.